Okay, yeah, I've got sound, so we'll go ahead and get started. And let me pop over the course. I'm sorry we got started a little bit late, but I was wanting to see a miracle occur, and it did. We actually have the screen above, and we're on Zoom. So it's an exciting morning. All right. Want to just go over where we are. Obviously, today is Module 5, and we've got a couple of cases that we're going to be looking at. One is county, and the other is foster. And then also I think we have the Gorman. I've got the foster key and the Gorman key, but I haven't put up the county yet. The county is the one that I think is going to be the most interesting case because it involves the use of data envelopment analysis, and we'll talk about that and take a look at it. Let me get over to Vital Source and grab my textbooks, get them up, and we can go from there. Let's see here. Here we go. They'll make me log in, or yeah, they'll make me log in. Okay. And last week we kind of got a grand tour of all the different ways that we could use optimization. And success. All righty. Now, back over here. Now, this week the cases that we're going to look at county, which I mentioned, it deals with data envelopment analysis. We got the foster case. The pages are all enumerated there. I want to just do a kind of a follow-up in as far as the leisure case and what we were dealing with there. And one of the things I'm trying to do in all my courses is to alert all of you to the fact that one of the emerging, I guess, applications that's out there are map, or what we would call GIS application, geographic information systems, ranging from stuff like Easy Map Maker to the ArcGIS Professional tool. And even the online tool that's out there, the freebie, is exceptionally powerful. It lets you do a lot of work with maps and overlays. It's got a living atlas. But what I have here is just simply some data in a zip file, in an Excel file. And all you have to do is go over to Easy Map Maker, download this thing, go to Easy Map Maker, and copy and paste those in, and it'll produce you a kind of a crude but useful map. And these are tools that are are really starting to emerge, especially as regards a couple of things. One is location, okay, and trying to look at location analysis, and that might be of your outlets where transactions take place. It might be distribution of your customers. In the case of leisure airlines, this is just a way for you to see this is indeed a trunk, kind of a milk run or a trunk line. And if you look there, you're going to see you've got two airports, Pittsburgh and Newark up north. Then you've got Charlotte, which is kind of in the middle. And then you have two destination airports, Orlando and Myrtle Beach. And what these folks do is they run flights between them. And so they basically have a little bit of a network issue that they have to work through. But Leisure Airlines is modeled pretty much on what you will find on the East Coast in terms of all these little independent airlines. Now, I wanted to take you back for just a minute and to show you, and so that you can kind of get an idea of the realities that come into play. Let me pop this back over here. And I have a couple of resources for you to take a look. This will take us out to the airliner. This is the airliner that they utilize. It shows you the cockpit view. It's a small plane comparatively, all right? And you can go out and take a look at and get some of the details in terms of what it looks like inside, etc. But these are meant to carry I think they're somewhere between, what was it, 100 to 200 seat passenger. You know, that's a far cry from a big jumbo jet that's carrying 400 or 500 people. But it's meant, this is designed for short. This plane is designed for short hops, so it can make altitude fast. It can make a quick descent. It can land in smaller airports. So it's designed to do that. So I had that resource there for you to take a look at. Then also, I had a resource here that talks about how airlines handle revenue management in that technique. And it's something that you might want to you'll want to take a look at for a very simple reason. It'll help you understand why the pricing can vary so much. And the reason the pricing can vary so much with them is simple. They're very capital intensive. So if they fly a plane, like if I've said this before, if I fly a plane from Southwest from Oklahoma City to Dallas, I'm paying. I have a high fixed cost that I incur, and so I'm at a certain point. I'm indifferent if I have a full plane or not. So I want the plane in the air, and what I do is I probably eat it bad if it's an off time or something like that. But I'll make it up in other flights. The whole idea is to have the plane in the air. And so that's why you can get some really fantastic deals on flights. And if you've gone and looked for flights through these different apps that are out there that give you some real-time pricing, you could see. But this will give you an idea of how they handle that, because they have to do their pricing has to be extremely astute because it's such a capital-intensive environment. And the big chunks are this. If you have an airline, obviously you got to have airplanes. And none of these airlines can afford to buy a plane. What they do is somebody makes planes for them. They take them on a lease or a consignment. And when they wear them out, they'll send them out somewhere to be refurbished and then sold out in the foreign market. Although that's starting to come down as carriers out in foreign markets are demanding new planes, okay? Now, you've got that. So you have a lease you're on the hook for. Then you have to pay rights to land at airports. You have to pay rights to dock your plane, to hook up to the terminal. You have to pay rights to leave the airport. And so by the time you've gotten chunked out with that, plus all the equipment you have to have, okay, and the FAA schedules certain types of maintenance that you have to perform. So you have an extremely high cost, a high fixed cost. And because of that, your pricing can end up all over the map, because if you're going to lose money, you might as well lose as little as possible. If you have a flight that's a weird time, but you have that same 25 people that sit in that 200 seat plane and fly. So that has some challenges the airlines do. And that's why they're constantly, you'll see one of them on the brink of a chapter 11, or you'll see them talk about merging. And you're also starting to see some of these little pop-up. Southwest kind of was the model, but there are several of these little pop-up airlines that are out there that fly a highly specialized and very small trunk line. Now, there's an airline at one time called Ozark, which was eventually purchased by Southwest, but Ozark ran primarily Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, New Mexico, and Missouri and Kansas. That was their, and they landed at the major ports. But if you rode with them, it was a return to about 1953 with a two prop or maybe with a two prop engine plane, and all. And I often wondered, are these military planes they just simply painted over or what? Because riding in them is an adventure. And with two props, you know, if one goes, if you're on a jetliner, they're designed if an engine goes out for you to stay. But on prop planes, you don't have those technologies. And a lot of it's not fly-by-wire, so you can have some adventuresome times. And I had a few of those flights that were a little bit hair-raising. Well, anyway, here's what you've got ahead of you. And you have the county case, and that's due on the 28th. Then we've got Foster, okay, and we've got Gorman. And so I want to talk some about the county case because it's the one that's probably the most detailed or the one that's probably the most prevalent in terms of folks' tools. And so I'm going to search the book and see if we can find this. And the file is over there in the, no, I don't want the drive through. Data development analysis. You gonna give me that today? Well, we'll just pop down to the contents. I think there's going to be 4. And or in 5, maybe we're in 5. All right. I'm still getting used to navigating through my book, although I like it. But it's still sometimes a bit of a challenge. Yeah. There we go. And this is are you guys logged in? But you're not getting the above, are you? Let me see. I knew it was too good to be true. Well, you can still see the screen, right? Okay. I knew it was too good to be true. All right. Mr. Dondel and say goodbye. All righty. Now, there in the textbook, this is section 5.1 over in the section 5.1. Data envelopment analysis is a technique in the simplest terms where we take a set of operations that are part of a group, a system. So like in this case, it's a set of hospitals. And we build a composite hospital. And we'll choose some variables, some inputs and some outputs, and we'll build a composite. And then that composite we use as a measuring stick to determine the efficiency of each of those hospitals. Okay, so that's really in a nutshell all it is. It's not as complicated as the authors try to make it. Now, it's probably one of the most prevalent tools that are out there, and they give you an example of this county hospital, and I'm over on page 218 where they talk about the input measures and the output measures. Now, DEA has also spread into franchises. So, for example, if I'm McDonald's, I'll take how many of your franchises I probably will take those that are owned by the company. And I think they have some individual franchisees, I'm not sure. But I'll build a composite, and then I'll compare that composite, which is a model, versus an actual operating a franchise that's operating. And the whole idea is to build a benchmark, okay? And that's what it's intended to do. And then with the benchmark, we compute an efficiency index to see how efficient that outlet is, or that system is, that system component, if you will. And if it's not as efficient as the model, then we say, okay, we have some issues here. If it's as efficient or more efficient, then that's good news. And it's fairly simplistic when you really just stop and say, okay, what they're really doing is just creating a benchmark. Yeah, that's all. And the issue becomes then for you as a manager, the hard part of this is choosing the input measures and the output measures. Now they've got some input measures and output measures in county and in the hospital. And when you go into the Anderson student files, and this obviously is in chapter 5, I apologize, you'll find that county and you'll find the model, okay? But I want to do a little bit of preparation by discussing it some so you can really kind of grasp what it's all about. Now, DEA is used by hospitals, franchising operations. There are a few people who have pioneered using it in mergers and acquisitions, and as one piece of it. Typically, what happens is, when one of those happens, two companies merge or somebody acquires somebody, there's always what we would call in the business the golden calf. What are you really after? And firms will pay another firm a premium, maybe in terms of additional stock of the new company or just a straight cash out deal, because they want something from them. There's something they possess, or there's something they can do. All right. Now, that's why out in Silicon Valley, everybody's hunting what they call unicorns. These are firms that are startups, and they've got an application, or they've developed some algorithm. They've got something that Google or whoever says, we could use that. Let's buy them. Okay. Now, we're going to see a lot of this as we see the technology creep more and more into the services. But the whole idea, when some of the folks who pioneered using DEA in that situation say, okay, let's take these two firms, they're going to merger. And both firms pretend that there's not something that the other wants. And we'll just compare them and look at them from an efficiency standpoint, not just from a share point, not from their share price. So we'll say, okay, which one's more efficient? And you say, well, why would you do that? Well, if they're efficient, the implication or the assumption is that efficiency means increased cash flow. And increased cash flow is what it's all about in mergers and acquisitions. Because if I buy your firm and I do it on a leveraged basis, the people who provide me that capital, they want their payday. They want whatever I promised them to pay them back, and maybe increase in shares. The share value increases. If it's a secondary market deal, it's not a public firm. What they're going to get in terms of profit share or a partnership bonus, or what they're going to get in terms of just simple return on their investment. Okay, so DEA has some, and we're seeing more and more of its uses. But again, it's just a means by which we establish a benchmark. And the part for you to remember is don't get bedazzled by the statistics or the math involved. Okay, you have to make sure that those input measures and those output measures make sense. Now, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but a few days back, maybe a week ago, I heard the new or fairly new superintendent of schools at Oklahoma City talk about we're going to have to achieve some efficiencies. Now, to me, in bureaucrats speak, that means he's going to close some more schools. Okay? And that's going to rile up a bunch of people in neighborhoods, because he said, well, how can we have he said, how can we have a school that functions at 100% efficiency here and at a 40% efficiency? And I wanted to make an appointment with him and go see him and ask him, you do understand you're in a school system, not McDonald's? because public schools, a school is a different kind of thing. But you thought I was thinking talk about ATMs or how many French fries we did this week. And I thought, if this is what we produce in terms of educational administrators, no wonder we're in the trouble we're in. But that's not anything new at the start of the 20th century. As we started to get all of these immigrants coming in the United States, then we decided we needed to school them, put them through public schools so they'd be Americanized. We built our schools, the public schools, like factories, and they were literally built to produce citizens on an industrial scale. That's another story. But you see here in the overview of the approach, they talk about there on 218, the input measures, the output measures, and then you'll see some of the input measures. And note, here are the hospitals. You've got general, university, county, and state. Okay, and as they speak there, we build a model, a mathematical model. It's a hypothetical composite. All right, that's why I said don't let yourself succumb to being bedazzled by the mathematical model. Okay, you can build mathematical models all day long, and if they're not guided by some good experience and some wisdom, they're trash. And before there was a firm that this was an investment firm one time, and I wish I could remember their name, but it was a firm that the principals, the investors, were people from MIT and Harvard and Stanford. There's this dream team of people who were the wizards of Wall Street, and they all gathered in their and they lost everything within 2 years because they had models to figure everything out. And I can tell you that there's not a single solitary model, mathematical model in the world that will explain everything for you. You have to have a lot of understanding of the company. You have to have some real wisdom, and you have to have some skepticism, and you have to ask yourself, okay, for example, do I have the correct input measures? Now, when we talk about systems, and I don't know how much of this, if you guys get the production course or your org behavior course, how much systems theory you get, but the more you get, the better off you'll be. One of the key fallacies of systems, and that is standardizing everything, is what we call the equifinality of outputs, and an assumption that if we take everybody and everything and we do it all the same way all the time, we'll get an equifinality of results or outcomes, and you don't. That's why you could take every public school in the country, you could take every university in the country, and you could make us all do everything the same way, and you're still going to have a variety of outcomes, because it's a fallacy to believe that because you have things in a system, that everything will come out perfectly. That's why they have quality control departments and quality assurance departments to catch the stuff that goes bump in the night. So when things like the law, which some of you have lived with, no child left behind, it sounds wonderful, but it means you better be prepared to put some significant dollars in if you're going to try to compare students' performance from one socioeconomic background versus another, or if you're going to try to compare firms that operate in one environment versus another. So I wanted to spend some time talking about this because it's of all of the cases that we'll do, this is the one that probably is the easiest or not case, but techniques. This is probably the easiest to misuse. And one of the things, now this DEA has been around a while, or some form of it. And just for example, back in the era of the Vietnam War, the Department of Defense was run by a man who had run Ford Motor Company, and he determined that what we'll tell the public is this. We'll talk to the public about kill ratios. And so we lost 5 people, but we killed 50 of theirs. What he didn't understand was that the American public, that 5 was, you could tell them we killed 50,000, and all they know is we lost 5 people. And so it went on and it went on and it went on and it went on. And after a while, of course, things collapsed for them politically, and that was the end. So you could have said, well, we killed 1 million Viet Cong this week. And there were questions about the reports, all that stuff. I wouldn't even go into that. But the American public would get outraged because it'd say my son, and in some rare cases, my daughter is not simply a statistic or a ratio. That's my daughter, that's my son, that's my husband or my father. So you have to be careful about this type of stuff. Okay, well, as you can see there, they have some input measures, and you see each of them like full-time equivalent non-physicians, supply expenses, and bed days available. How many days are those beds available? And the beds available implies that we churn people through. Now, long ago, when my little brother was born, I'm middle of 5, a little brother and a little sister, and they were both what we call an October surprise. My mom got pregnant with my little brother when she was 42, and then she got pregnant with my little sister when she was 47, and at that point, she said, "I'm going to die in this pregnancy," because 50-year-old woman, even today, that age is high risk for birth. And the simple matter was, when after she had each of them, and I remember because my mom was an entrepreneur, had a business, so I and my siblings, but primarily me, since I was lower on the food chain of my older brother and sister, I was the one that changed the diapers, etc. So the fun part of all that was understanding, how fast mom would be home from the hospital. But and in those days, the first one, she stayed in the hospital for 3 weeks. And then the second time, when my little sister was born, she was in the hospital for 5 weeks. Today, I'll talk to young couples there at church, and they've had their baby, and she's thrown out of the hospital in 3 days because they got that churn rate. So that bed rate is a churn, just like we do inventory turnover. Those folks, like the insurance companies, they didn't go, "Again, you have that bed available, so let's scoot them on through." And if they're a long-term patient, say in oncology or something like that, boom, we get them out to people that specialize in doing that, because we want you through the door. Okay? And if you're like me, if you go get an annual physical, if you get 5 minutes with your doctor, you'll be lucky. So they want to move that all through. Now here's the linear programming model, and here they start to put some weights on these. And here again is another management decision. How much weight do we put on each of these? Okay. Now, if you're in a big system, like say a franchise system, or St. Anthony's that took over Shawnee Regional Medical, okay, corporate will say, boom, here's how many you're going to handle. Here's how many bed days. They'll build a composite model and then provide you that. And supposedly this all works, okay? That's why I'm trying to encourage you to be very skeptical about these things. They're good tools. They're great tools. But you have to use them with a lot of care and a lot of wisdom. And I would want to see somebody use this model if they really don't know the industry well and they don't understand its flaws. Then I would say we get a 16-year-old, they get their driver's license, and we hand them the keys to a semi-trailer. Bad things will probably happen. And it's the same thing that we can run into with these situations. Now, the authors are going to walk us through, okay, and they give us examples of the Medicare patient days and and the weights for each of those per facility. And then they get the composite. And they'll show you, they'll walk you through each of those variables to develop the composite. Okay? There's an old saying, you probably have heard it several times: data tortured sufficiently will confess to anything. Never forget that. Never forget it. That's why hopefully we give you enough help in terms of visualizing data, so when data are communicated to you in a pictorial form or graphic form, you can look at it and make some sense of it. I continue to see stuff that I go, I can't make any sense of this. And I sat through a meeting at the start of school, and I was astounded when I saw it was a set. Rather than a line graph, it was a bar chart, and each of the bars on the chart added up to more than 100%. And I was going, this makes no sense. But I wasn't going to raise my hand and go, hey. I just said, well, there's a good example for class. All right. So you can see it now. Here in figure 5.1, they show you the thing in its full glory, okay? And you can note the weights, and they use they use the little descriptor terminology of the weight, and weight WG is the general, university, etc. And then you come with then you have the composite right below them. Okay? The math's not that hard. The notation can kind of throw you a little bit, but once you kind of figure out what that's all about, you're good to go. But they're really basically building a composite. Now, what this is designed to do is to create a benchmark. And we create benchmarks so we can find outliers. Okay? If I'm flying in an airplane and I'm the pilot, I have a course. I have a navigator who will tell me if I've strayed too far off, because I have an outlier. If I have to fly around a storm or fly up and down over one or who knows what, if I get too far out of a certain band, the navigator is going to have to get on the horn and get me back, okay? So that as I'm coming into the airport, it picks me up and the transponders start to give me information as I'm starting to land the thing. But it's the same principle here. We create a composite, we create a benchmark, and we test everything against it. Does that make sense? Yeah? Again, don't ever let something like this just, no. It's really that simple, and just building the composite. Now, inherent in this is a belief, again, that the inputs of these hospitals are all the same. The state hospital, like the general and so forth, and you can see that they're not. But what we're going to do, what you'll end up with, is you're going to find some outliers. Now, if I look here at figure 5.1, just in terms of Medicaid recipients, I'm seeing things ranging from a bottom of 33.16 all the way up to 48. So nearly half of my patients are on Medicare. Now, why do I worry about that? Well, Medicare is an insidious plot to create death panels, just like Obama wanted to do. I'm kidding. Medicare, our patients, mean what? A lot of government oversight and restriction and regulations. Medicare, if they're in the picture, will say to a hospital or to a clinic or to a doctor, here's what you should do or can do. Here's what we'll pay you. And the general public, okay, does not comprehend the battles that go on between hospitals and insurance companies and And doctors and insurance companies, maybe you've gotten embroiled in something like that, okay? But just to give you a good example, at the end of my mother's life, my siblings and I were coughing up $5,000 a month for her care. And she shared a room with somebody. And then her physician came in, and when we made the decision that really all we had there, our mother was gone. It was just this body. And that was a very difficult thing to do. As I sat down with the physician, I said, what does it look like? Now, my mom had assets. She had insurance. She was in Arizona, which is old people's land. She had every resource. And my doctor said, the billing from our hospital for the last 6 months of your mom is going to be about $4 million. And I thought, oh, holy smokes. But he said, the good news is Medicare, it's a Medicare billing. I said, so you're telling me that the government is going to cover this? Well, they'll fight and wrangle with us and we'll settle on something, but yeah, you're good. And when you're checking out $5,000 a month for your relative, then you start to find, do you really love them or not? And trust me, $60,000 a year is a lot of money. And because I was the one that wasn't married and didn't have kids, a lot of the burden fell on me. He's got plenty of disposable income. Oh, okay. But I was shocked when I saw the amount. And I thought, I don't believe this. So healthcare is one of those things that is just kind of off the charts. Anyway, we build the composite here, okay, and the over in 221 they walk you through the constraints for each of the other three output measures, okay, and the rest of this just becomes a narrative that tells you how everything is built. Now, over on the far left side there in the italics, page 221, is some good wisdom about the DEA. All right? And again, you could read it faster. I could talk about it. Now, figure 5.2, they show you that benchmark, the composite, versus the others. And then it just becomes a question of working through, which of these hospitals is not as efficient as the composite, okay? If you have a hospital that takes in a lot of emergency people, it's going to be a lot of emergency room people. You're going to get people with all kinds of things. And typically, and we still have it in this country, which is just insanity, we have people whose medical care consists of they get really sick to the point of death and some extreme measures needed or whatever, or they get a whooping cough or and you go into emergency and they take care of you. The only trouble is the emergency is expensive. And I can tell you that for sure. Now, I'm going to tell you something about me that you'll probably laugh about, but hey, that's my burden, my cross to bear. I love York patties, okay? The candy, old York patties. Anybody ever heard of them? Seen them? Now, what I really like is to leave them in my car in the spring and the fall when it's really warm. And then as I'm heading home, I take that and use it like just a tube, and I just shoot that warm pepper, and it's fantastic. The problem is, if you're not careful, you'll swallow a little wrapper, which I did one day. And I had to make a quick turn to go over here to St. Anthony to the emergency room. And I knew what was going on. I just needed something to get my throat cleared, and then some type of advice on, it's in my system, now what? The doctor said the good news is it's more of a paper fiber-based type of, it's not foil. He said, that's good news for you. And I said, sounds good. He said, as a precautionary method, what we would like to do is we probably ought to give you an x-ray, maybe a CAT scan. And I said, no way. So I had to sign this thing that said they had offered me all these services, and if I died on my way home, they were absolved. You know what they were getting ready to do was bill my insurer for about $5,000. So I learned to be careful with the wrappers. See a story about me? Is that interesting? And aren't I fortunate that no longer do the patties come in a foil? It's a fiber-based. And I figured they probably have had enough people do the same thing I do. And so they said, instead of choking people to death or slicing at their insides, why don't we make a fiber-based little shiny thing that looks like it's foil, but it's truly not. So thanks to the people there who make that magnificent candy. All right, here's the composite. And you can see again, we're going to use it as a benchmark. And then here we start to build the objective function. And notice we're going to minimize, okay? And the county file has, in the Anderson student files, the county file has the solver in there. So you can take a look at it. But the authors are just walking us through the narrative, and it's a minimization problem, okay? And then we get the solution. And what they start looking for is, are there any slack or surplus resources here in terms of certain constraints? And we start looking for those. And then we're going to test the efficiency of each hospital. And then they give you a summary of the approach and some interesting information. I'd mentioned earlier, and we're getting down to the point where we're 5 or 6 minutes left. So I'd mentioned a little bit about how the secrets of airline seats, how they're priced. The textbook has a wonderful, wonderful passage here about revenue management. This book is the gold standard for management science, and the authors do a pretty good job of giving you enough background to kind of sink your teeth into it. Although we would have a whole nother course on how you come up with the numbers. For example, say the number of person hours to produce a product, or the amount of time spent at an ATM. There are entire courses on that are designed to help people build the data. And then they'll take that theory and mix a little bit of practical experience. Maybe industry has some standards, and away you go. One of the positive benefits of having a union, especially building cars, is that the union has said, here's how much time it ought to take to build a car. Here's the amount of time it takes to, put the bumper on or whatever. And with human beings, then you could say, okay, the people at this workstation, they're performing or underperforming, and the union's position always was, it's something wrong with the product design or something wrong with the line or whatever. But what they did was they provided a lot of data that have helped car manufacturers, ironically, program that into robots. So we fed the robots, and now they're not feeding us. And so this revenue management passage where they talk about airlines and how they do their pricing is really, 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 really valuable. Okay, now, and they talk, the authors give you this little bit of discussion about Harrah's and their casino, the Cherokee Casino Hotel. There's a book out there, and I use it in one or two of my courses, and it's called Competing on Analytics. And the people at Harrah's are the first group of people who really stood, and Capital One, who really understood analytics. If you run a casino, every square foot needs to be productive. And you need to design it so you run people through like a bunch of rats. And they really are designed like that. They'll have a psychologist come in and they'll figure out, for example, on slots. Slots are where you could just get massacred. Card games, that's a different matter. because there is some skill involved. But the slots is just you put your money in, take your chances. But they will go through, they'll sit down very regularly with psychologists and figure out what types of bells to use that get people riled up, or on the machine itself, what colors will get people's attention. They'll use focus groups. Why? So you'll come up there with $500 worth of quarters and put them in thinking you'll get $1 million. And you say, why is it that they, ask yourself, why is it when someone's playing the slots, for example, that if they hit the jackpot, the machine goes crazy and the money comes flying out. It's in this tin thing, maybe look like it's something really nice, and it's all that noise. Why? It's called operant conditioning. They're conditioning you just like a rat. Now, the more specific term is what they call superstition conditioning, meaning you associate something that you did with an outcome or a result, and it had nothing to do with it. It's probably like you with your favorite sports team. My wife will do this. She's a big Cardinals fan, and the Cardinals she's in an intense situation. Her thing is to run to the bathroom and stay there till the game's over, because she says, if I don't, they'll lose. Okay? And of course, I can tell you that I know more about managing baseball teams than any of those managers, because I've told my television that probably 1 million times. Okay? Or maybe like the other night when Army was playing OU, and I'm thinking, I love Army and I want to see them do well, but I don't want to destroy our chances of going to the playoffs. So I had to go get my lucky OU cap and put it on. And I know that that's why the ball was intercepted, because I had that lucky cap on. It's called superstition modeling. And people will literally, these casinos will literally set that up, and they play on that because they feed that kind of thing in the mentality of people. The slots are where they just clean up. And it's, when I drive by one of those, I want to be a crusader and put a sign aside that says, welcome to the numerically challenged, because your probabilities of winning are pretty low. And as I've said before, and I'll conclude it with this, is try to integrate faith with learning. As I've told the president here at the university, I've told the International Mission Board, my people groups are high-stakes international gamblers. That's my people group. And I want to minister to them. So I'll need a plane, an entourage, a few $100 million, a villa, because I minister to their needs. And they still haven't answered my emails or letters. And the president now won't talk to me. He's threatened even a restraining order. But I know that people group needs to be served. Who's to argue with my calling? What can I say? Well, folks, thank you much. We're done. I will see you on Wednesday. Anybody have a question? Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, it is either in person, or if you cannot be here, we had 17 of us here. So as folks are, if they give me an excuse why they can't be here, like I had to go and meet, and they're good. If they participate like this, so I'm keeping track of it. Yeah, but it is mandatory to be attending, either out there if you're indisposed, or at least in here. So I'm taking names, and I know who's been naughty and who's been nice. But thank you for being here. But if you should have something that occurs, I've got one person that sent me an email this morning, got hurt or broke their ankle or something. So they're sitting probably over at the room. I hope I'll see them on here. Thanks so much. And see, I've got Aaron. Okay, that's for the whole group. Now we had 17. Yeah. I see a question here. Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. Colton said, good session. Good. Thank you. I'm glad to see you're here. Anybody else? All righty. All right, folks, I'm going to stop the share and the recording and end the meeting.